this is a new application that is specifically directed towards making firearms owners more inconvenient.
We are the Armed Attorneys. Today we are talking about a kind of scary update we have with regard to flying with a firearm. This involves kind of list making, so you'll want to hear about it. But before we begin, show your support for the Second Amendment by hitting that like button. And today's sponsor is our friends over at Sonoran Desert Institute. If you're interested in taking your gun hobby to the next level, maybe even making a career out of it, check them out at sdi.edu/arm-attorneys. Now, we're talking about the TSA, nobody's friends, and flying with your firearm. Now, we have an entire video on how to legally fly with your firearm. So we'll recap it ever so briefly. If you want to fly with a firearm, it needs to fly as checked baggage only, unloaded in case, locked up, and declared at your firearm counter. And so apart from the civil enforcement penalties, which we'll talk about in just a moment, what are we talking about, on the state level? Actions.
Well, what I wanted to point out was that there's also a federal criminal law that they rarely, if ever, enforce, but it does exist. However, pretty much every state has a law that says you cannot take a firearm into the secured area of an airport. Some states have cleverly crafted defenses, such as Texas and Georgia. They have defenses if you're a license holder that you can't be arrested, you're allowed to take it out. However, what a lot of people forget is that the federal government, the TSA, is fully independent of the enforcement of state law. And the way that the TSA does it is that they do like to fine people, and they will fine you for any kind of firearm accessory, or ammunition. So, we're talking about people who get into the unfortunate circumstance of being in a rush, being in a hurry, forgetting that they have a gun in their handbag, forgetting that they have a gun in the piece of luggage that they threw in the back of the car and drove across the state with, last week, where they could legally have a gun. And unfortunately, this happens to a lot of people.
So going back to, apart from just the state issues that Edwin raised and we're looking at generally, it's civil enforcement, a penalty of up to $14,950 per violation. And these usually come up whenever, there's a security violation. So whether we're not flying properly, or a lot of times people forget and accidentally have a firearm in their carry-on baggage. Maybe they're in a rush. These humongous violations have been pretty annoying because the timeline to receive these notices have sometimes been up to 3 years. We hear that policy is changing, that they're going to start making the local TSA offices administer those fines. So we might see a quicker turnaround on those. But we are seeing a new, very disturbing trend with folks who inadvertently or accidentally carry it into the secured portion of an airport. We probably talk to several hundred people a year who accidentally make this mistake. And it's not that they're trying to take a gun on a plane. It's really, most of the time, it's just kind of carelessness. And what's going on now?
Well, and this has come to our attention very, very recently. So it's something the TSA has started doing just in the last few weeks, I believe. And that is that people who are caught with a gun, even though they may be fully excused under state law, they may not be penalized criminally, the TSA is now putting them on a previously created list called the Secondary Security Screening Selection List. And what does that do?
So it does a couple of things, but to put it, big scheme of things, this is adjacent to I'd say the terrorist watch list, the no-fly list. This is, I would say, near those same categories. You can still fly, but you are on this list where it creates quite an inconvenience. Apart from, you no longer being able to check in online, you have to check in person, you have to print your boarding pass, you couldn't use your phone, for example, to board.
They're going to unpack all your luggage.
Yeah, they're going to unpack all your luggage. You have this additional screening, so you're going through the full naked body scanner, you're going through a metal detector. They're doing a pat down, they're wiping down all their stuff, they're wiping down you, and they're testing it for explosives, which can add considerable time to your trip.
And they just started this, and apparently you get put on this list immediately. For example, I recently spoke to a gentleman, accidentally took his gun into an airport in the state of Texas. Fortunately, due to Texas having the defense of him being a license holder, was not charged criminally, was able to proceed on his way. However, by the time he made a connecting flight in another state, the TSA had already put him on the list. And so between the time of him leaving Houston, getting to wherever he was going to connect, trying to get on the connecting flight, they pulled him out and had already put him on this secondary security screening selection. So that is scary fast.
Yeah. So, think about getting your pre-check revoked. Think about maybe getting charged criminally in your state, getting this giant fine from the TSA, and then getting placed on this list for God knows how long now. The individual that I spoke to a TSA agent, when he learned about his kind of new status on this SSSS list. And they said this is a new policy being implemented by the TSA for, people who are carrying, or alleged to have carried weapons past the secured portion. Now, is there relief here? Don't know how it's going to shake out just yet. But let's say you're repeatedly hit with this and it'll be on your boarding pass. It'll say SSSS. Your bags, whenever you put your luggage tags on, it'll have a big SSSS on it. If you're repeatedly hit with these things, do people have any relief?
They can attempt to contact the Department of Homeland Security, the Traveler Redress Inquiry Program. You can then make an appeal of your status on this. And one thing I wanted to clarify is that this SSSS list has been out for quite a while.
Yeah.
So it is in existence. But what obviously is alarming and of particular interest to our audience is that this is specific to firearms owners who happen to have made a mistake, in which we're not justifying the mistake, but this is a new application that is specifically directed towards making firearms owners more inconvenient.
Yeah. So if you're going to travel with a bag that you sometimes carry a firearm in, this is what I do. I completely turn it out. I flip it upside down, shake it out, make sure that there's no firearms, ammunition, anything that would be prohibited as a carry-on device, because we can see this would really make your life inconvenient.
This is something we really, really can't overemphasize enough, is for people to be extra cautious when taking their carry-on, especially bullets. Bullets can hide anywhere. I was not in a carry-on situation about this, but I had a bag. I did not even know. I did not even remember putting ammunition in this bag, but I just happened to pick up a bag. I was going to use it, picked it up to take it from one room to another. It turned upside down, and I'll be darned, a bullet fell right out of it.
Yeah.
And so if I had taken that bag to the airport, I would have had no clue, and it would have gotten me into a huge amount of trouble.
Yeah, and even with checking your bag, if you're missing one of those critical steps, declaring your firearm unloaded, locked, encased, I've had clients who have an unloaded firearm, but maybe the magazine has cartridges in it and the magazine isn't sealed or inside of another like plastic bag or container. And even though they did everything right, the TSA will be like, gotcha, you didn't follow one of our little ticky tacky rules. So the TSA, we'll link that in the description below. The TSA has their guidelines up on their website. So you got to be very, very careful. And if you have any questions about it, obviously you can speak to an attorney. But we hope you enjoyed this discussion. If you did, consider subscribing, hitting that like button, and help us fight the anti-2A algorithm by sharing this video. And we always appreciate your questions and comments in the section down below. And until next time, we're the Armed Attorneys.
So, a bullet, though, would not get you on this.
We don't know.
Probably.
Yeah, probably would.
Yeah.